Happy Saturday and welcome back to day 13 of my 100-day health challenge. Today is Saturday, as I said, and this Saturdays for me are sort of my big day to do everything that I couldn't really do during the week, the big things to kind of keep stuff up and running. I try to do smaller things during the week, but Saturday is really my big day to do all the big stuff, like if I need to go grocery shopping or to the farmer's market, if I need to meal prep and then actually fix my meal, and to clean and do the more deep cleaning in the house, or to do laundry, or just, and I try to definitely find times in there to relax as well, but honestly, Saturday is kind of that day where all the things during the week that I wasn't really able to do, I'm trying to keep up and do things on Saturday. And so today was a lot of food stuff, so I'm gonna share a couple recipes that I'm trying, and I'm super excited about them, and they smell amazing. Well, at least the one that's actually cooking right now smells amazing, and then the next one that I will be starting to cook here soon, which has a shorter cook time, it's gonna smell just as good. So let's get started. So talking a little bit about weight. So it's been interesting to me. I talked a little bit before about how we want to be constantly trending downward in our weight, but that there's going to be fluctuation within that, kind of almost like steps. You're gonna be on a step and then drop and then be on a step, or not for everybody, but that's a general trend, is that we it's okay to have some fluctuation within those steps, right? Because it's a gradual process. We're not just trying to drop all of a sudden, and we don't really want it to be this like always steady and then no, we don't want that either. So for me, it's been interesting to actually see it, to know that I have lost consistent, now this is the key, consistency. So I know that in this last week and 2 weeks almost, that I have actually lost about 10 pounds. And yes, on this end, it is fluctuating a little bit. So I keep kind of gaining and losing about 1 to 3 pounds. Really 1 to 2 pounds has been the average. And that's not a bad thing. Now, I'm just like you, I get frustrated. Okay, maybe you don't, but I get frustrated sometimes when I see that scale and it's like, okay, I'm down, and then I'm up, and then I'm down, and then I'm up. And that's one of the dangers of constantly weighing yourself, because it can become discouraging and it can become a nuisance. But it doesn't have to be. To me, what it tells me is I look back and I realize I came from this target all the way to here. And even if it's fluctuated a little bit, this is still a huge gap, okay? And I was actually looking back at my app on my phone, because I have a weight tracking app that's tied to my scale. And it's supposed to measure all kinds of other things besides just weight. So it's been interesting to look at that too. But I went back through and looked, and I realized I started weighing myself in around January of 2021. And between January 2021 and now, I have almost consistently stayed always above 380. So this is an interesting plateau for me, and an interesting realization of, yes, I have technically reached the 370s way back in early 2021, but that did not last. And in fact, I then trended, like I said before, all the way up basically to or past 400 pounds. And so it's going to be interesting. And there's this part of me that is consistently encouraging myself, because I am at a plateau. I am at a wall I have hit before, and I haven't been able to cross for a long time. And I am very optimistic about it right now, but there are definitely parts of me that are a little scared, a little like, I've hit that barrier now. What am I gonna do? And I have to tell you, I'm super excited to see how this week goes, because this past 12, now 13 days has been all about making slow and steady changes just to establish habits that I haven't been consistent with in the past years. And so I have been bettering my nutrition and just getting into a habit of eating 3 consistent meals a day with 1 or 2 snacks in between. They're healthy snacks. and then taking my supplements on a regular basis and my, for example, Advantage, MetaPower Advantage powder, and all those kinds of things. I have done that. I've been getting more consistent sleep, so I'm adding a little bit at a time. And then I talked recently about my goals for exercise. And today I was able to do some more dancing around the house and some more just really, I had an electro swing playlist on from YouTube. I love electro swing. And it was just really fun to hear some of those. And so that, I'm excited to see what happens this week, because I'm actually then adding in another piece of the puzzle. But again, I'm trying to do small, consistent changes that I know I can do. They're realistic. Remember, SMART goals, they're realistic. Okay, I've been specific. I've been specific for my nutrition, right? So my SMART goals for nutrition right now are that every meal is going to have, my goal is to have no more than 30 grams of carbs a meal and no less than 30 grams of protein. And I know I've not always consistently hit that, but I am aiming for that, and I'm trying, and that's my goal. And it is realistic because I've done it before, I've done it in the past. And then within that, it is measurable because I can measure how much I'm actually doing in my recipes, or by reading labels, or even just Googling the facts, nutrition facts for things. There's tons of resources. We have so many more resources these days. And then they are achievable. I believe they're achievable and realistic, okay? And they have a timeline, right? They have a time frame. In this meal, when I'm fixing it, when I'm eating it, this is my goal. I'm doing this each day. And yes, there's probably more goals that I will edit in the future, but this is my just initial, what I consider a very simple goal for me, because I'm familiar with these kinds of things. Then for my for my SMART goals for supplementation, I know the times I take things, I know the routine I'm doing, right? I'm taking the Lifelong Vitality, XE Omega Alpha CRS, and Microplex VMZ, Terrazyme, PB Assist, Metabolic Soft Gel with the morning meal, right? So I know when I do breakfast, I have those supplements. And then sometimes if I wake up way early and have the time, I try to remember to take a Terrazyme when I first get up, just to get started and get those enzymes running, right? And helping support. So then after breakfast, I know I'm gonna have my water bottle with my MetaPower Advantage powder, right? Then I know for lunch, 15 to 30 minutes before, I'm gonna take my MetaPower Assist capsule. And then I know that with that meal, I'll have Terrazyme and another metabolic soft gel, or MetaPower metabolic soft gel. Then I know after lunch, I'll have another water bottle with another MetaPower Advantage powder sachet. And then I know that for dinner, again, 15 to 30 minutes before, I'll take an assist an assist capsule. And then I'll have my nighttime supplements. I'll have my Lifelong Vitality and my Terrazyme, right? So, and then when I go to bed, I try to have one more Terrazyme. And so those are my kind of SMART goals for supplementation. And I have a measurable, they're achievable and realistic. They're timely. I know when they happen, and they're specific, right? So then for movement, I know I've talked about my specific goals, and my measurable goal is to have 2 to 3 days a week. Okay, so 2 minimum, 3 ideally. Each of those times, 30 minutes in that day. So 90 minutes in a week, right? 90 minutes of intentional exercise split between 2 to 3 days, which I feel like is very realistic. And within that, they can be split into 15 and 15-minute segments, or just one big half hour. But my goal, right? Specific, measurable, achievable or attainable, realistic and relevant, and then timely, right? So I know this is gonna happen, and I'm gonna try this week. This week is really when I'm starting that, and I'm really excited to see what happens to my weight and see, is this going to help me continue to hit further below this plateau I've seemed to hit these last years. Okay, so I'm really excited, but I just wanted to share that. So on the lines of nutrition, all right, so today I made 2 meals, I'm actually currently making 2 meals. One is an orange honey mustard salmon, and the other one, I don't really have a name for it. It's based on both a curry and a winter stew for lamb. So I have lamb stew. And it's interesting because I did not have time to go grocery shopping, but I had both of these things in my freezer, and they were both very solidly airtight, vacuum sealed, and they're both local. They're actually from farmers markets. One is a local grass-fed lamb stew meat, and the other is actually from a local group that does that brings seafood back with them at parts of the season, right? They fish for it in Alaska, they flash freeze it, and then they bring it here and distribute it at different locations and stuff. So that's kind of my two sources of meat and seafood, and those are both really good meats. Seafood, salmon is just beautiful, very packed with just flavor and protein and just, oh, I love it. And then with lamb, it's a red meat, but it's on the lean side, right? It is healthier than beef and pork. It's a lot leaner than both of those meats. I also love bison too, but lamb was the pick this time. So to talk about that. So first I had to thaw my meats. Usually I try to thaw them overnight, and then what I'll do, if you have freezer meat, and you may know this, but if you have freezer meat, you do want to thaw it before you cook. There are certain things you can cook straight from frozen, but it's just not as good. And there are some that you really shouldn't do that with. There's just some risks that can come with it. So, but even if you can, it just doesn't have the same flavor, and you're gonna have odd temperature fluctuations, and you really want some consistent temperature to your meat when you cook it so that you know it's getting thoroughly cooked and you don't have like one spot burned and dry and the other spot, you just wanna kind of control that a little bit. So normally I would put it in the night before from the freezer to the fridge. And if it's really sealed well, you really don't have to put it in anything. Like I put it directly on or I have in the past put it just directly on like a shelf in my fridge. But if you're not sure, like if it's not the best, or if you sealed it yourself and you're just not sure, go ahead and put it in a dish or something, just so that you don't end up with like meat juice everywhere and you have to clean it, and it's like, especially if you have something else nearby, like a fruit that then is now contaminated and you can't eat it. So, put it in a container if there's doubt, or just put it in a drawer that you can easily clean, then it's not gonna leak down further. And then I prefer to do it overnight. Now, this time I forgot to thaw my meat, because I was gonna put it in yesterday before I even went to school, and then I was gonna have it just let it sit overnight and into the day, and it would have been totally fine, and I just forgot. So what I did is I grabbed 2 of my mixing bowls. So I have a stainless steel one, and then one that's it's not really stainless steel, but it's like more of like a Teflon type thing. And what I did is I added cold water to each of those. So like slightly below, like not super cold, but definitely below room temperature, because you want to make sure you're not encouraging the bacterial growth as it thaws. And now I actually, because of the potential for bacterial growth, I did not want to leave it out at room temperature, especially since I was running around the house cleaning and I didn't want to have to pay attention and potentially forget. So I filled the bowls partway with water, and then I put the fillets, like for the fish fillets, I put them down in, and I layered them in this case. You don't have to do that. Sometimes it's better to just do a thin, like one layer so that it thaws faster. But this time I have 4 pretty decent sized fillets of salmon. So I did have to grab a second smaller container for one of the fillets, but I put 3 fillets in this deep bowl with water, and then to keep them from floating up, because for the most part they were staying under the water, but I just put a plate on top, a small plate just right in the top of the bowl, and just stuck it in the fridge. And then the same thing for the lamb. I did the same thing. I just put water, and I put the 2 packages. I had 2 1-pound packages that I just put down in the water, and then put a plate over top of it to keep it down, and then just stuck it in the fridge. And now you'll hear people say that you need to change out the water certain times. Usually the reason why people will say to change out the water every half hour is because it's actually sitting on a counter in room temperature outside of the fridge, and you need to make sure the water stays cold so that you don't have bacterial growth. It does not take long for bacteria to start growing as soon as something reaches above 40 degrees Fahrenheit. So, but in this case, since I put it in the fridge, I actually only changed the water out once, and I changed it about halfway to close to the end. So I thawed my meat for about 4 to 6 hours. And I actually put the lamb in a little bit longer, but I thawed it for about 4 to 6 hours. And I changed the water out once, like halfway through, about 3 hours in or 4 hours in, close, kind of a little bit further to the end. And really the salmon was ready to go. That's why I actually marinated it first. But the lamb needed a little bit longer. But I did try to aim for 4 to 6 hours of thawing time. And that could vary depending on your fridge or what you do. And I mean, it's just easier to do it overnight, let's just be honest. But since I forgot, and you could do it even faster than that. Like if you kept changing the water and you did want to put it at room temperature, just be very careful to not let it actually rise above refrigerator temperature, which I think most refrigerators are 35 to 45 or 35 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Just make sure it stays cold. So I don't know that I would risk it. Like it's one thing if you have a cooked shrimp ring that's already cooked and it says on there to like leave it out in cold water and like just switch it once or twice, but that's, again, it's already cooked. And even that comes with its risks. I personally would just avoid it unless you really have the time to check it every half hour and change out the water and make sure it's staying cold and that you didn't accidentally put it too close to the sun and the sun, as it's moving across the, just, I would say one, thought overnight, two, probably just do a bowl with water and put it in the fridge and just let it thaw that way. And it still was fast. It still was, only 4 to 6 hours. That was not bad. Once I got it out of the fridge, I needed to thaw the lamb a little bit longer because I actually got the lamb out last. I got the salmon out first. So I started with the salmon. And so while the salmon was actually, I just kind of let it chill literally over to the side. And I made my marinade, so I did draw inspiration from a recipe, but I did not copy the recipe. I do not mind cooking from recipes, but I am such an experimental person when it comes to food that I love to try different things. And sometimes it works, and sometimes it does not, because literally the turkey thing I made the other day ended up being just a disaster. And I ate some of it and then I was like, okay, I literally can't eat any more of this without making myself sick, even if I feel like I'm being wasteful. This is one of those things where it just did not taste good. It didn't work. The flavors didn't work. I did manage to, thin it out so it wasn't as seasoned, but then the meat was dried out. And I don't know, it could have even been the way it was frozen and it got freezer burnt. I don't know, whatever the case. So it's hit and miss, but I don't try to waste food. So I don't experiment to the extent where I'm just throwing money around because I don't have that kind of money. So, but what I do like to do is, so for example, with the turkey, I knew that it was already it had been in the freezer a while and I was hoping it was okay, but I think actually it was just really dry and kind of from the freezer. So, it didn't make me sick or anything. It was just it was sort of a disaster. And that was one time where I was sure it was going to work and then it didn't. And so that, I'm not saying throw money around and just experiment with whatever, because stuff is way too expensive for that. And no, don't do that. It's not good to waste food either, but it is fun to, if you know your tastes, try to kind of play with the flavors a little bit, use a base recipe that either you have or maybe you've passed down from a family member, or even just Google or Pinterest it, and then you can tweak it, keep it the same, whatever you want to do. So this recipe was designed, it was a honey mustard salmon recipe designed for only 4 servings, which is usually 4 small fillets or 2 big ones split in half. Now I actually have 4 decent sized servings. I think I'm actually gonna get 8 out of this. So I went ahead and doubled the whole thing and added some things, took some things away. So I did 4 tablespoons of olive oil. I did extra virgin olive oil. I did 6 tablespoons of yellow mustard. And then I did 4 tablespoons of honey. Now with the honey, I used an orange blossom honey. I wanted this to be a little bit more of like an orange honey mustard, which actually turns out, by the way, to taste amazing. I was gonna put some orange oil in it, but then I realized I had orange blossom honey. So if you just wanna use orange blossom honey, or if you just wanna use honey and add some oil to it. Now I did end up having to use 2 different honeys because one of them did not want to come out the rest of the way of the container. It was a little crystallized and I was too lazy to heat it up. So I went ahead and just added a second honey in there. So it actually has 2 different kinds of honey. but most of it is orange blossom. The other is just a local regular raw honey, and it's really good too. So it'll just add to it. Then I did 2 teaspoons of chopped garlic. I did a half teaspoon of pink salt. You can use whatever salt you want. And then I used about 1/8 of a teaspoon to 1/4 of a teaspoon of black pepper. If you like black pepper, add some more. I just did like 1/4 to 1/8 teaspoon, just kind of tacked it in there and just did that. And then I did 1 teaspoon of paprika. I may have had about a heaping teaspoon, so like it could be closer to 2 teaspoons, but the goal was to keep it right at 1. And then I did 3 drops of turmeric oil because I wanted a little bit of a smoky feel in there too. So it's kind of like a smoky orange honey mustard salmon. And so then I just mixed all that together. And then I put my salmon fillets down in a Ziploc bag. And then I just poured the marinade over top of it. And then I just gently, because you don't want your bag to break either. So you just gently kind of like massage the meat. And yes, I said massage. All right, treat it well. It's going to treat you well. So I just rubbed in the marinade, made sure I got the skin sides and the meat side. And I just gently made sure everything was thoroughly marinated. And then I stuck it in the fridge. And my goal is to let it marinate for about 2 to 3 hours. And so it's already been in there a couple hours right now, and it'll be in there for another hour. And then since I haven't fixed it yet, all I'm gonna do is, if I can find my aluminum foil, because for some reason it's disappeared. And so I'm going to do a casserole dish, about a 9x13 casserole dish, and I plan to line it with aluminum foil and then put my 4 salmon fillets and then surround it with broccoli. I actually have some frozen broccoli, so I'm probably gonna use that. I'd prefer to use fresh, but I don't have any right now, so I'm just gonna use some frozen broccoli. And if I can't find my broccoli, I have some other vegetables like some spinach or some asparagus, but my goal is broccoli because I really like broccoli. I might season it a little bit before I put it in there, or I might just let the glaze from the salmon kind of go off to it and just let it roast with it. So I'm just gonna put the casserole dish with the aluminum foil with the salmon skin side down, okay? So you want the meat side, the flesh side up. So skin side down with the kind of surrounded by the broccoli. And then I'm going to set to probably 350. Most recipes call for 400. My oven's a little, I don't know, I don't always trust it at 400. And so I will probably put it somewhere between 350 and 375 and then let it go for about 15 to 25 minutes. I'll probably check it at 15 minutes just to see how it's doing. And then really though, it probably shouldn't take more than 25 minutes. You don't want to dry it out. So what I'll probably do, see where it's at 15 minutes and then give it 5 or 10 more minutes. And then I have a meat thermometer, which I will just test to see if it's at, 140 to 145 degrees Fahrenheit. That's, I believe, what's considered well done for salmon. And so, and the other way you can tell is if it's kind of a lighter pink and it's flaky, easily flakes with a fork and has that deliciousness, but I'll still probably test the internal temperature with the thermometer. Okay, so while the salmon is marinating, oh, and by the way, once the salmon's done, I may because I'll probably kind of put the aluminum foil a little bit over it, just not completely cover it, but just sort of create a little side tent thing. But what I may do is after it's cooked on the 350 or 375 and is done, I may turn the broil on for like 1 to 2 minutes just to crisp it. But I don't know, I'm hesitant with that because if you don't watch it really closely, it can burn easily. So we'll see. I'm sure it'll still be fine either way. That's the other benefit of 400 degrees is it can crisp it more. So if you have a good oven that you trust and you want to do 400 degrees Fahrenheit for like 15 to 20 minutes, just make sure that it looks good and that or test the temperature. So while the salmon is marinating, I got out my lamb, which was now pretty much fully thawed. It had a couple like solid spots, but they weren't really frozen. I just needed to break them apart a little bit. They were just slightly stuck together. And I kind of set that aside. And then I made the sauce. So I'm doing the lamb in the slow cooker in my crock pot. So what I did is I went ahead and set my crock pot to 6.5 hours. I added the extra half hour. So one, it can get warm, but also so that I can be working on stuff before the actual 6 hours starts. Then what I did is I mixed my marinade for my lamb stew. So I have 2 pounds of lamb stew. And again, I got the inspiration from 2 different recipes. One is a curry recipe and one is just like a winter stew recipe. And I'm trying to just use ingredients I have around the house since I didn't really have the time or didn't really want to go and kind of also trying to wait until my actual like budget for this month, you know, because I try to keep on that. So I decided to use stuff around the house, which I have plenty of it. So why not use it? I don't want it to go to waste. And so I did 2 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil. And then I did 3 teaspoons of chopped garlic. I actually added the little bit of juice that was left under the on the bottom of the jar just because I'm trying to get rid of the rest of it. So it was probably about 3 teaspoons of chopped garlic along with maybe like a half to 1 teaspoon of like garlic juice or whatever is left at the bottom of the jar. Then I didn't have curry powder and I didn't really have a lot of the wintry vegetable kind of, and I didn't really want like Italian flavor because I've had a lot of that lately. So what I did is I sort of just Googled ideas of replacements for curry powder. I mean, I have a lot that I'm familiar with, but I decided like, what do I want to do? What do I want to use? What do I have sitting around the house? So I kind of improvised since I'd already used some mustard. I would have preferred ground mustard, but in this case, I went ahead and since I already had the yellow mustard out, I did a tablespoon of yellow mustard. I did 10 drops of the Mexican cuisine oil, which has cumin and lime and avocado oil and black pepper oil and coriander oil, and I think I'm missing one. And then I did 10 drops of that. Then I did 5 drops of turmeric because I had that out as well and I wanted to add a little smoky flavor to it. And then I had fennel, sweet fennel. So I added 5 drops of sweet fennel. And then I added 2 drops of pink pepper because I did want a little bit pepper flavor, but I didn't want to add more pepper since there was already some pepper in the Mexican blend, but I love pink pepper. It's got such a good flavor. It's a bit different. If you've never tried it before, I've even made desserts with pink pepper. It's really good. And then I did about a half a teaspoon of paprika, and then actually did a half a teaspoon of ground cinnamon. Now the ground cinnamon kind of stuck in one location. The paprika kind of went all the way around, but that's actually about a half a teaspoon of paprika, maybe 1 at most, but it's about half teaspoon of paprika and then the half teaspoon of ground cinnamon. And I just mix it all up. And then what I did is I heated a skillet pan on medium heat. On my dial, you've got like high and low, and then you've got 2, 4, 6, and 8, I believe, in between. So I put it right around 4 to 6, which is in the middle, so medium heat. And I actually went ahead, because I wanted to give myself time to set up the crock pot and get some chicken broth going and heating, I actually went ahead and poured my little mix, spice mix, into the skillet before it had reached full heat because I wanted to be able to go and not have to watch it. So what I did is I added it to the skillet, and then I went over and I added 4 cups of chicken broth, which was just 1 container of chicken broth. This was no salt chicken broth, to my crock pot. And then I went back over, and right around that time the skillet was sizzling and the garlic and the flavors were starting to get really aromatic and just cooking and sizzling and had such a wonderful smell. You could just wait until it starts sizzling and just add it in then, but I wanted to be able to like not have to watch it and, you know, be concerned it would burn. So I did let it heat slowly, and then when it was sizzling, I went over and consistently stirred it so it wouldn't burn. And then I went ahead and added my lamb meat because I'm just gonna brown it. So I added the lamb meat, I stirred it around. It probably was, 3 to 4 minutes, maybe 5 minutes at most, just because I had 2 pounds of stew meat. But literally you're just browning the outside. You're not cooking it. You're not trying to get it fully done. You're literally just browning and getting those flavors out. And then I literally just took the skillet, poured it directly from the stovetop into the crock pot, into the chicken broth. And then I'm trying this. We're gonna see how it goes. I recently found these really beautiful fresh, well, it's funny to say fresh, but I found these really, really good golden raisins at my one of my grocery stores around here. And so I went ahead, and I know they're on the sweeter side and they're a little bit, they add a little bit more of the carbs and stuff, but this is between like an entire stew dish, so I felt fine with it. And it reminded me of some of the food I've had in places I've traveled. And so I added about a cup of golden raisins to the crock pot to cook with the lamb and the chicken broth. And so then I just covered it, and I'm gonna let it sit. Then towards the end, I have some little small baby tomatoes that I might add. And then I have some spinach or kale. They're frozen, but I can add it in towards the end of the cooking and give it a little bit of green to it. If I want, I could add some green beans or something. I have some canned green beans and that kind of thing. But let me just tell you, as I was sauteing that stuff, it smelled amazing. So I'm super excited. It smelled like not spicy, but it did have that sweet and smoky scent to it, and I'm super excited. So I'm hoping it turns out really well. I think it will, but I'm excited about it. So I've got lamb cooking right now in the slow cooker. I'm gonna do 6 hours on low. You could do 4 hours on high. It's just that lamb tenderizes so much better when it has slow cooking to it. So it's on there for 6 hours. And then what I'm gonna do is, in the middle of that time, since the salmon doesn't take as long, I'm just gonna let it marinate, and then I'll pull it out when I'm ready to bake it, and I'll just bake it in the oven. And if I can't find my aluminum foil, I'll just use my casserole dish. I would prefer to have the aluminum foil because it just helps with cleanup, and it also kind of helps keep that heat in and helps sort of steam it too. But if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. I'll just put it in there in the casserole dish and watch it and make sure it lasts. Let me just say too, these are things that I know I like. These are tastes I like. I think these flavors will work really well. I did get inspired from different recipes that I then made my own. But I would just encourage you that as you're making these health changes, don't feel like you have to buy all the things and do something just like someone else does it. Improvise on your own. Switch up the proteins. Most proteins work the same. Stew meat is pretty much stew meat. Yes, there's some different flavors to it, and yes, certain things help more than others, but you know, lamb stew meat, bison stew meat can use the same recipe. Even beef stew meat or you know, chicken chunks, you could use the same flavors, just switch out the protein. Or you probably could even use super firm tofu chunks. You might have to switch up the cooking time a little bit, but you could do that too. Most things, you just have a base recipe and you just switch out the things in it. So you use the preferred protein, you use preferred broth. So if something calls for beef broth, you know, you can put chicken broth. It may not have the same flavor, but hey, it's gonna work. You can use different spices, right? So I didn't have curry powder, I didn't have curry paste, I didn't have curry hardly anything right now. Can I tell you, by the way, how excited I am that the Thai cuisine blend is coming out from doTERRA. Naha. I tried some samples of different blends. I'd used the other cuisine blends before, obviously, but I'm super excited about the Thai blend. Anyways, that was kind of besides the point. But just have fun with it. Use what's around. Use some of your ground spices. Use some, you know, you can use even things like ketchup and mustard, or you can use vinegar. You can use, just think about the flavors you want. Think about what you already have at home. Do some research. You know, it doesn't take much to, if you have a phone, if you have a computer, just Google it, Pinterest it. And it doesn't mean you have to use the exact recipe or the exact thing, but you just do what's easiest for you. And this is economical too, right? If we're talking about financial health, this is one of the reasons that it's been very good for me, because I am always trying to stay on budget. I'm not trying to be extreme, but I don't want to be, you know, spending all my money here everywhere and spending $500 on groceries. I mean, if you have a large family, okay, that makes sense. But with it just being me, I mean, I don't need to do that. And in fact, I shouldn't be doing that. I should be saving some of that money back or giving it somewhere else. And so I think it's good to use what you have. Now, that doesn't mean you sacrifice your health either. So it's one of those balanced things. Find a healthy recipe, see what you already have available, and then see if you really do need to go shop or if you have some proteins there that are great. All right, I know this was longer. I'm super excited though about my recipes. If you try them, let me know. If you have suggestions on what you like to make, let me know in the comments below. I would love to try new recipes. I'm always looking for new things. I have more stuff in my freezer, and I will hopefully be going to the farmer's market sometime soon. Switching out seasonal vegetables, all that kind of fun stuff. So, all right, that's it for today. I get to do my 2-week check-in tomorrow. Super excited. I will see you then. Have an awesome day and a great night. So, all right, bye.